Good evening. Good evening. How you guys doing out there? This Mike back with the Soberheadz podcast, one day at a time. I got a very, very, very special guest tonight. I have a good brother that I've known since I came to the Freehold area and been in sobriety myself. Let me introduce you guys to my man, John D. What's up, John?
Hey, what's up, Mike? How are you?
It's good to be here, brother, man. I'm so thankful for having you on tonight, man. And I heard your story several times, and I just love your passion for recovery and everything, man. So let's get started, man. What happened, how it was, and how it was, what happened, and how it is now, brother.
Well, first of all, thank you for having me. It's a blessing to be here. That's the first thing. The fact that I could be here talking about this is, it's a miracle. I'll be honest. It's a miracle. It's a God. My life's God-given, and Alcoholics Anonymous has really made me who I am. God got me to the point where I was ready to succumb to this program, but Alcoholics Anonymous really, made me who I am today. It taught me how to live with myself, live within the confines of myself, understand myself, why I operate, how I operate, and that's how I live my life now. And without this program, I would be living unsuccessfully as I did for 45 years, So, basically what happened is I was born. I was born with a sneaky, evil, deadly disease of alcoholism. But, I wasn't drinking and partying and using drugs in the crib for sure, but growing up in a house where there was a lot of anger, a lot of yelling, very uncomfortable. At an early age, I started to do things that would be what we would call, addictive behavior and void-filling behavior. My childhood was, in a house where there was a lot of love from my mother, and my father was pretty angry man, and look, I don't know how my father was raised. I don't know who his role models were. I'm sure he did the best he could with, what he knew, but that's just my reality. That's how it was. So, I learned at a very young age to escape, get away, find a safe place, find comfort somewhere. And most of the time I would just stay out of my house. I grew up, a lot at my godfather's house across the street. And I learned to just stay away, get away, go to places where it felt good to be, not where it was uncomfortable to be. And then when I would come home, it would be hiding in my room. And then when everyone went to sleep, it was like my time to live. And most of my childhood, growing up, no happy memories. I don't have happy memories, but I have a lot of memories of, immersing myself at night with food. That's probably where my disease first started with, childhood memories of, going out in the kitchen when everyone's asleep and just, eating not a scoop of ice cream or an ice cream cone, but all the ice cream, all the cereal, all the, to the point where my father would say, who ate all the ice cream? I just went shopping. Who ate all the cereal, and that period of time, that's how I got lost. It was like I was in an abyss, at a young age. First time I ever drank, I was probably like 7, and it was across the street. And it was, they used to have the parties, and they would always have a keg of beer back then with cups around. And I started drinking out of a cup. And that's the first time I ever drank freely in my own. And I literally threw up and was drunk literally, the first time I touched. So this was, my life being, riddled with, addiction was only a destiny before, I would meet the substance that would really, take me away from myself, and then, ultimately keep me away from myself, which is, the problem with this disease. Going into middle school was really where my life, went bad. When I went into 7th grade, I was young. I was only 11. Yeah, I was a kid. I turned 12 in 7th grade. So now picture an 11-year-old, a little chubby 11-year-old with 14-year-olds. It was an environment I didn't belong in. You work with youth, you see the difference between an 11 and a 14-year-old.
Yes.
I don't belong there, and not only don't I belong there, but I don't start puberty. I'm a little kid. These kids are grown. To me, they're grown men. So, I would be on the wrestling team, and they would kid me and tease me about things like me not hitting puberty and stuff like that. Now, as a guy, when somebody teases you about stuff like that, that's very difficult to handle, You know, I felt really insecure about myself, and I had all these negative feelings about myself. And, you know, I would see what other kids look like, and I didn't look like that. You know, I didn't feel like them. I started looking around at who had girlfriends, and I didn't. And I started developing this real, you know, self-loathing of myself. And, you know, compound that with now, you know, I start, you know, developing in 7th, 8th grade and seeing girls, and puberty starts, and I'm looking around, and I'm start looking at Playboys, and I start looking at, you know, sports, and start looking at these things. I'm comparing myself to all these people, and I'm not them. So I have this really insecure feeling of myself where, you know, I feel just really below everybody. I don't feel good looking. I don't feel, you know, I'm not as good at sports as everyone. You know, I hung out with all the kids, but I wasn't one. I was always an outsider. I was an insider, but always an outsider. I never felt close to no one, never had a best friend. It was the girl I liked, always liked someone else. And that stuff was very painful to me, you know, where, you know, in 7th grade, I still wet the bed. I used to go home from school, and I would put a shotgun in my mouth. I had a shotgun, and I would do this ritual where I would put it in my mouth, but it would not be loaded. You know, it was just something to feel like I could take the pain away. There was just so much pain, you know. I didn't want to die, but I was in so much pain. I didn't know how to escape it, you know. I would hang out with the older kids, and I remember one time on a rope swing, I went on the rope swing, and right after I went, I turned around, and a kid went right after me, and he hit me in the chest with his feet, and he knocked the wind out of me, knocked me on the embankment. And he was an older kid. And I remember laying there and embarrassed, humiliated, hurt, and afraid, you know, because if I was a tough kid, I would have got up, but I was scared. And it was things like that that just really broke my spirit, where I was just a very scared kid. I was very, you know, insecure. I felt worse than everybody. Like I just wanted to always be someone else. Never wanted to be me, you know. And then that carries into high school where, you know, I go out on the football team, and I'm, like I said, I'm friends with everybody, but I don't feel close, you know. And then I get invited to a party, you know, going into my freshman year of high school. I'm 13. And when I go to that party, I go down in the basement. I remember all of it, where I was, who was there. And that's when I drank, you know, and that was the first time I drank. And when the alcohol hit me, it was a feeling that I had never felt. I felt alive. Something finally gave me the courage that I never had before, you know, and that little boy was put to pasture. You know, and I realized that with now alcohol and it was drugs and a fight, and someone said, "Oh my, who's this kid? He's crazy." This personality just, it was like when the alcohol hit me, it was just like an instant feeling of this is what was been missing, you know. Yep. And I'm literally a 13-year-old kid. So now once I get that feeling and I know I could be someone else, I never want to be who's really me ever again. I know I could be someone else, and I found the way out. And it's going to be through alcohol and drugs very early. Is a huge part of my story. Most of my story is drug related, and chaos. You know, fighting and crime and selling drugs and just being disruptive in school. And everything is about attention, craving attention. You know, I'm not selling drugs in school so much for the money, but it's the attention it gives me, the popularity it gives me. You know, and my high school is literally, you know, I'm alcoholic right away, drug addict, you know, selling pot in high school and fighting and disruption in class. And, you know, my brother, when I'm a senior, when I'm 17, my brother gives me a fake ID. He was 21. Not only was my brother 21, but my brother was sober and a cop. So I had this fake ID. I graduated high school with an alcohol addiction, a drug addiction, a DWI, and because of the DWI, unable to get in the Marines. You know, so while kids are going off to college, you know, I'm going off to, you know, crazy land, going down to the shore and partying, you know, and my life is just a life of chaos. Everything I do is chaos. And I would do things like, you know, buy a chain and then immediately look for another chain, or, you know, there was just always something, but nothing felt good. The minute I got something, I needed something else. Relationships with girls were a tough one, because it wasn't so much if a girl liked me, it was, why does that girl not like me? Why does that girl not like me? You know, everyone had to like me. If a girl said I was cute, it meant I was fat. It was hurtful. and there was no ability for me to ever, enjoy the things I had in my life because I was so miserable inside, so tore up. And then, coming out of high school, I work in a gym and I start getting into steroids and I start getting into weightlifting. And I think all these things I do are going to be answered to my prayers because this is going to make me feel comfortable, because I remember, I'll never forget, a girl said to me, if your body ever matched your face, you'd be unstoppable. Stuff like that stuck with me for years and years and years. It was things like that just made me not feel good. So I always would be like, all right, I'll get her. And I would go to the gym and go down to the shore. I have fake ID and I'm hanging out with all the bouncers and I got money because I'm hustling. And I would go down to the shore and meet girls. And the minute they showed attention to me, I would start picking myself apart, saying, why is she with me? I would remember back what the kids would tease me about when I was little and in 7th grade. I would start, knowing that, there was flaws to my body that she can't see. But if I got to take my shirt off, she's going to see it. And I would just get so uncomfortable, that I would just want to, recoil away and say to my friends, like, come on, let's go. Let's just go back to the room. Let's go back to the room. No one understood why I was that way. And to be honest, like, I didn't know why I was that way. I didn't know why I was so insecure, but I was, to the point where I would look at girls walking by and I would gauge if I could be with them in bed or if they wouldn't. There was just this weird thing that would go on, like, no, yes. So like a girl had a flaw, I felt okay with her. There's something wrong with her and she'll love me because I'm loving her, but there's something wrong with her, but I could never be with a girl that was like, what I would consider to be a 10 or have her stuff together because I didn't think there would be any reason she would want to be with me. So I'd always look for the broken one, and, so my life goes on like that. The problem is everybody I associate with is doing the same things as me. So chaos and all the things that go on in the life of using drugs and drinking and partying and crime and selling drugs and fighting, it becomes what's normal to me. Normal to me is not going to work and coming home. That's unnormal to me. Normal to me is to drink too much and use drugs and smoke and run around the streets like a wild man. And really what I did was put my family through hell. I tortured them, my mother, my poor mother, my brother, I costed my brother a lot in his career, with the trouble I would get into because, I start getting arrested now and I start getting into real trouble. My brother's a cop and they want to know, how does he not know what's going on? My brother's getting called into internal affairs for things I'm doing. How do you not know this? How do you not know that? It was a real drain on my family, and then, as I got older, I started getting arrested and then prison came and then longer prison sentences came and, I had to go away to state prison. And I remember when I was away, a close friend of mine died. And that was one of the first times in my life where I really felt like, thank God I'm put away right now because I probably would be dead. That was really the first time that I felt that. And that was in like 2000. I was 28 years old and I was locked up for 4 years. I should have did 8 years. And, it was like, and that was like the first time I ever heard my mother really say like, I sleep better with you in here, and I didn't understand that, when you're in it, you don't really understand how many people you're hurting,
Indeed.
So I come out of that prison sentence and I'm on this, intense parole. I'm not supposed to leave my house and, I'm just not doing the right things. My father would always bail me out of trouble, would always get me another job, so I'm working in the union. My parole officer's not really riding me because he knows my brother, so I'm skating like always. Everything always worked out for me. That's just how my life was. So here, this is working out for me too. Great. I'm in the union. I'm sneaking out, going to clubs. I'm not even supposed to be out. I'm taking it as a big joke, but what's going on is the disease is just waiting for the chance to grab me again, and I don't even know 100%. It, but it's running with me. Everywhere I go, it's right with me. And it's literally right towards the end of my parole where I'm not even supposed to be out, where I meet a girl and we start dating and my parole comes to an end. And right when my parole comes to an end, I start using cocaine, injecting cocaine. And it just had a hold of me like a vice grip, where I couldn't let it go. I couldn't get away from it. I couldn't shake it. It would call me and I would go. I had no defense to it. And, I had this girlfriend and I would tell her like, look, you can't be around here because this is going to go two ways. I either go back to jail or I die. I don't see any other way this is going to go. you know, and she was younger than me, and she had all this trauma that had happened to her in her life, you know, growing up in another country, you know, bad things that happen to girls. I'll just say that. And then she came to America and had more bad things happen to her, you know, and I just felt like I didn't want to hurt this girl. And I knew I was gonna, you know, and I couldn't stop it. So I tried to push her away, but, you know, based on her trauma, you know, she wanted to fix me, I guess, or, you know, it was better to be with me than be with no one and be with herself. So, you know, she stayed around, and then she goes and she got pregnant, you know, and she got pregnant in 2003. And in 2003 is the first time that I ever really, you know, put recovery in my life. You know, in 2003 in the summer, I went to my first treatment. And I always thought that AA was like, you know, a loser place. My brother, like I said, got sober when I was young, and I didn't understand it. I didn't understand going for coffee with guys, going to the diner with guys, going across country with guys. I was like, well, I'm going down the shore. Like, I just didn't get what he was doing, why he was doing it, or how it was fun. It just didn't seem fun. You know, in my mind, I would sit there, Mike, and I would picture me in the future normal. When I say normal, like not using drugs, not using alcohol, I just didn't know how that happened. I thought, like, what happens? Do you just grow up? Does it just stop one day? I didn't really understand it, you know? So when my wife was pregnant with my daughter, that's the first time I went to treatment. And, you know, I can tell you for the next 15 years, it took me to get sober. I went to my first treatment in 2003, you know, and I didn't get sober to 2018. And, you know, in those 15 years, it was probably the most painful existence I ever had. It made me, you know, being in 7th grade, you know, like a dream, because, you know, here I had this wife that I loved. I had this beautiful baby, and I had no ability to stop. And, you know, anytime things got bad, I would go to AA, and things got good, I would come out. I didn't know how to get sober, nor did I want to, nor did I think I had to give into the program. You know, I resisted it at all costs, because to me, it was always in the way of what it was I wanted to be doing. See, I only need to clean up the mess that I made, and then let me get back to life, and everything will be fine. You know, I needed to be in the gym. I needed to make money. I needed to take my wife or buy my wife something because I hurt her. I didn't understand the concept of getting sober. You know, I just understood, like, okay, I'm okay now, it's okay. And it would just be repeat, where, you know, there would be, I swore I wasn't going to leave the house. And here I am in the morning, there's 57 missed calls, you know. How did it happen again? How did it happen again? And I remember saying things to my wife like, if you could just let this one thing go, I'm so sweet and love you, I'm so good in if you could just let this one thing go, you know, or like, what's the, you know, I would try to minimize it. Like, when you're asleep, what is the difference? You know, things like that, you know, and so it was 15 years of that, you know, and going from injecting cocaine and to smoking cocaine. And then at some point, you know, I turned my disease around, you know, into heroin, and thought that was the better option, because, you know, at least I would be able to be home when I was doing it. You know, the cocaine would have me out of the house, where I'd be, you know, afraid to come home, paranoid, not answer my phone. Where heroin had me more active in my house, had me more active in my business. You know, I thought it was like the miracle. I mean, like, I should have been on this for my whole life. My life would have been great. That's how crazy this disease is. It leads you to the next bad thing is better than the last bad thing, you know. And so basically, you know, me doing heroin, you know, in my 30s, right, is me taking that first drink when I'm 13. You know, it soothed me in a way that nothing did. It was like, wow, this is what I've been missing. I carried that same thing, you know, 20 years later, you know. And then, you know, as always, my wife, you know, she had enough. My wife, you know, finally left me. And that was the most devastating time in my life. And I bring that up because at that moment in time, everything I loved was gone. My wife, my kid, I was all alone in my house. And the only thing I could do was get numb. It was so much pain that I could not be numb. And I crashed again. I went right back to the cocaine. And, you know, I went on this terrible run for 3 days, where my wife had showed up at the house after she left, because my daughter was calling me all night. I went and answered the phone, and she was scared that I died, you know, because that's how people would they wouldn't know. Like, I'm not answering the phone. And she showed up in the house and seen what was going on in the house and called the police on me. So I took off for 2 more days. So for 3 days, I didn't sleep. I didn't eat. I didn't drink anything. And third day, you know, I went back to my house and I overdosed. And it was in the midst of the overdose that I jumped out a window thinking I was going to be dead, not wanting to be dead in the house that my daughter was going to, grow up in. I thought it was the honorable way to go, go out a second story window and, end up in the hospital. And I got arrested because when they found me, they found drugs. And, I'm in the hospital and I'm on morphine and I'm having someone bring me drugs in the hospital because I knew what was going to happen when I got, when I wasn't high. I knew the pain I was so scared to face the pain, because now, all drugs and alcohol were doing all this time was just getting rid of the pain, getting me away from whatever was going on in my life. And this was the time where this was not the time to get sober. Like the pain was so severe. If you told me I couldn't drink, there was no way. I had to be numb from this. But because of the arrest, I had to deal with it. I had to stop using, and it was the most brutalest, painful time in my life. And because of my wife's troubles, she would want to spend her time on the weekends going out and having fun because I kept her from all that, and I would have to, have my daughter and. Being with my daughter on the weekends, trying to keep her life normal, me not being able to drink, me not being able to get high, because I had to go through this court process. It was just a very painful time. And, it was a day of reckoning for me. It was payback. My wife wanted to pay me back for all the pain I put her, and she would say things, very, very hurtful, honest things to me. Like I hurt her more than the men who raped her. If I was never raped, I would have never been with someone like you because I was broken. So that's the only reason I was with someone like you. Things I had to handle and cope with that I didn't have the mind or the wherewithal to deal with because I didn't know how to live my life. I didn't understand how someone could say something so painful to me at that time. But I don't really understand how this mind works and the soul works and the spirit works, and I understand now that I did cause her that pain. And that was a heavy burden to hear that, to know that the person you loved the most hated you the most. Like, how did it come to this? This is not what was supposed to happen here. We were supposed to be a happy home. I got married to her because I wanted to live in that house, married with a child, not to live separate houses and have the person I loved the most hate me. It was painful. And it was in that period of pain where I met somebody, on a very random trip. I went to a store, the Lowe's, and when I was walking in, a girl was walking out, and she had this big plastic bin. And I cracked a joke, "I'll bury yours if you'll bury mine." And the second I said it, she laughed. And Mike, it was like the pain just lifted out of me, like someone pulled it out.
Praises. Wow.
Yeah, and I turned around and our eyes clicked, and we hit it off. And every day I spent with this girl, and I say that because after a period of a few months, of spending all this time with this girl and being so happy and enjoying my life. And I'm drug free now, right? I'm sober now. In my mind, I'm drug free because I'm in this program. And, what she sees on the outside is here's this guy. He doesn't drink. He's not using drugs. He raises his daughter. What a catch, and to me, wow, what a beautiful life I have, and I don't know that I'm being, a good boy because I have to be. I just think this is all right. This is how my life is now. I'm a good boy now, and what happens is my wife wants to come home. My wife says to me at court, "I miss you and I want to come home," because her troubles got to her. And she said it, and it was the same thing that happened at Days in Lieu. The second she said it, I snapped back. I said, "Go home right now." And what I learned in sobriety is that girl at that Lowe's, all she did was fill a void. She took the pain away. That's how I learned that this disease is not anything to do with drugs or alcohol. It has nothing to do with drugs or alcohol.
Hold on, I can't hear you. John. I can't hear you. I can't hear you, John. John. I can't hear you. 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 Can you hear me? Go out and come back in. Wow, come back in. Wow, come back in. Go out and come back in. Yeah. Go out and come back in. Wow, John had a good story. Hopefully we get him right back on, and we can pick up. I'll tell him when he picked up that. This happens when you're doing some time on live on these kind of platforms. But he was digging in. Hold on. Hello.
Yeah, you good?
Yeah. You left off on a part of the girl with Lowe's, and she was filling the void. That's when we lost contact.
Yeah, so what I learned is she filled the void, and all I had to do was not have a drink. And I went to the city for a job, and I set my guys up. I was supposed to pick my wife up in the morning and bring her into the city to a show and take my daughter to my cousins. And I was all so excited. I was so excited because this was the night I was going to show her I was different. I was, for the first time, like, not home, and had to be responsible. And I swore I was going to go to that city. I was going to set my guys up in that restaurant to do that job. And I was going to be home at 7 a.m, like I said, and take her to the city. I would have bet $1 million on it. And I set those guys up, and I went and I said, and I never said I'm going to have a drink because I really wasn't a drinker. I said, I'm just going to have a drink. And before I know it, I walked down the street a couple of blocks and I went to a bar and had a drink. And it was only, a couple hours, and I found myself in Times Square, in a hotel with a prostitute smoking crack and not coming home, and it was the same thing all over again. This time, everybody was looking for my wife, my family, my bosses. I never showed back up at the job, and I was the most, oh man, I'll never forget that feeling in the morning. And the only thing I could think to do was walk to my construction site a couple of blocks away and take a brick and beat myself all over myself with a brick and say I got jumped and try to make an excuse that, I got jumped and that's why I didn't come home. And I went to the hospital to get the bracelet. And when I called my wife to tell her what happened, she was in the city for the show. And she was literally at that hospital in under 2 minutes. And I had to run out and pretend that I came out because all I did was go to get the bracelet. They didn't treat me. There was nothing to treat, and I lost my wife and I had to leave that house. And, I mean, at this point, if that's not enough to get sober, I don't know what's left. I don't know what's left, but what happens is, again, I'm stopped in my tracks because now she files for a divorce and I have an attorney and he says, John, I'm telling you right now, if you want to see your kid, you better get yourself in a program and I need to see, you're in tests and I need to see that you're not getting into trouble and you're, doing all these things. So, like a good boy, I said, okay, I won't give you no problems. I promise I won't give you no problems. And that's what I did. I got, I had to leave my house and, I got an apartment. And, I went to this program and I was going to IOP and I was giving him all the things he needed, but my life was lacking. And in that early stage where, I wasn't in that house, I went to a card game in Staten Island. I had to watch this card game. And I went inside the card game to talk to they always have like a girl, a drink girl, and a massage girl. I went in the card game and the girls started talking to me and they said, why don't you go on Tinder? Right? It was new at the time. And I said, what's Tinder? When they showed me what Tinder was, it was like, it was the next thing I was missing my whole life, And then I became, basically a serial online dating addict, where I would just get lost in Tinder and Match.com and Plenty of Fish and,
I've been there.
all these, all these sites. And it would just be, when I say I'd be driving to work at 6 a.m, swiping like it was bad. And, now, now I have an apartment and I'm not drinking and I'm getting girls all the time. And I have this construction site in the city and I got, 13 laborers under me and I got a radio and they bring me up and down the elevator and I'm making money and I'm hustling again and I'm doing all these behaviors, but I'm not drinking. So to me, life's good, life's good. And, I did that for a good year, straight year of just chaos, out every night, go-go bars, girls, girls, girls. I just always needed something. And I met who is my wife now in that period of time. And, she was just like many of the girls, like all the things I said to her, I meant, but the minute I was with her, the feeling went away. The excitement went away, and it wasn't that I meant to say these things and be with her and not call her, but it's just what happened, and she called me out on it. And I was like, man, you're crazy talking to me like that. You don't understand. I lost my phone and da 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 da, but I knew I was wrong. But, I didn't have feelings, in that way for anybody. I thought I did. But then the minute I was with the person, I didn't. I had to have the next girl. For some strange reason, only God will know. After a couple of weeks, I reached back out to that girl. And I texted her a lie. I said I was in Staten Island, and I thought I'd just seen her at this deli. And she's told me the deli's been closed for 2 years. So I said, oh, well, anyway, I'm at the tattoo parlor. Why don't you come? So she came to my house, and we started hanging out. And what happened was her and my daughter got really close, and I started to see this beautiful relationship with them. And, my daughter was my life. My daughter was everything to me. And, in this period of time of being what I thought was to be sober, she spent all her time with me. I took her everywhere. She would come to work with me. I would take her everywhere on the weekends, take her to get her hair done, take her to get her nails done. She's in like 7th and 8th grade at this time. So it's like me and her are peas in a pod. Her mother, she had her own issues where she would, be depressed a lot and, because of her traumas, and, always did the best she could. But, I was always the fun one. I always had the money. I always had the party house and, fun things. Now I had the girlfriend, and, so we were having a lot of fun, me and Tammy, and I would see her with my daughter. And, Mike, my body and my mind are so beaten up. I come out of a marriage. I don't know what love is. I don't know what it feels like. I've never been in a normal relationship. All the relationships I've ever been in were chaotic, or, I was in them and I was insecure, or there was never a normal, like, husband, wife, normal relationship. And, I don't know what I'm feeling. Today, I still have a hard time knowing what love is and what it feels like. I don't understand normal feelings. I only understand extremes, extreme highs and extreme lows, But I know this woman's good. I know she loves me. I know my daughter loves her, and we spend a lot of time. And then I have to go on a bachelor party to Vegas. And when I go to Vegas for this bachelor party, I hadn't drank in a year. I hadn't done a lot of things. Maybe once I did. And I went to Vegas, and I think I made it the first night, but the second night I didn't make it. I ended up going again in a hotel room by myself, and doing coke for the rest of the trip. I didn't even stay with the bachelor party. And I said, you're no different. When you get home, you better settle down, because you're going to destroy this kid's life. Your daughter is everything to you. You're literally no different. You're going to go home and you're going to destroy everything. Go home and settle down. And that's what I did. I called Tammy and I said, when I get home, I want to settle down. I don't have no business going out. I can't do it. I will be exactly who I was. And, I'm not going to say I don't love my wife, but what I'm going to say is at that time, there was a lot of confusion in me. There was a lot of, I didn't jump in that relationship right at that point for love. I jumped in that relationship. Although the relationship was developing, let me be clear, it wasn't that I didn't love her. It wasn't at the point where we were ready to take the next step, but I needed to take the next step, and that's the truth. And I don't say that to be hurtful or mean or cruel. I say that because that's the truth, and that's what we need to be, is truthful here. I needed to take that step where maybe I wasn't spiritually ready or mentally ready, but I needed to settle down, or it was going to be trouble, for my daughter. And I said to her, when I get home, I want to settle down. And she said, all right, but now you got to stop all that behavior, all these dating sites. And, I said, okay, I understand. So 2 things happen when I come home. One, my mind's racing because I don't have these dating sites, and I can't get my brain going. And I set the allergy in motion by using drugs, when I was away, that it was sitting dormant in me, the disease, but it was waiting, it's always waiting. And, you know, within 2 days of me coming home, I was right back on heroin. And, you know, it was instant right away. Just like, again, 13, just like again, when I, you know, did it when I was married, it was, you know, right away back on drugs. And then, you know, every decision I made, and from that point on, you know, was all under the influence of, you know, of drugs. You know, the relationship didn't have a chance to grow healthy, you know, because it grew in my disease, you know, and I would, you know, do everything in a rush, like, okay, sell your house, okay, move to Jersey. Like, we didn't develop the relationship. I was really in no place to be in, not that I couldn't have been in a committed relationship, but I'm not well, you know, and I don't know I'm not well, you know, so expecting this woman, this one woman, to make me feel like 5 women a week, to make me feel like my first true love, to make me feel like, you know, it's impossible for her to do for me what I would need her to do to keep me on it. It's impossible. She is unable to do it. It doesn't matter. And, you know, now I'm under the influence of the disease, and, you know, we move in together, and now I'm in a house with her and her children and her mother, and my disease takes off like a rocket ship. And, you know, what I did was destroyed this family, you know, in every way, shape, and form. You know, it started off, it was funny in the beginning because, you know, it was like I would do funny things, or I'd be extra nice, but, you know, then the nights would be where I wasn't sleeping, you know, and everybody's they're used to a normal house, and it's 2 a.m. I'm doing construction, you know, I'm leaving the crystal light in the living room. I'm leaving syringes around the house. I'm putting the remote control in the cabinet. Just like all this stuff starts happening, you know, and I go from being a bonus dad and a great father to someone who, you know, would lie about, you know, where he was coming home from work, say there was traffic all the time because, you know, I had to go pick up what I had to pick up, you know, say I would go for bagels and not come back with bagels, you know. I began to not show up for anything. You know, I missed my own stepdaughter's high school graduation. It got to the point where I missed my daughter's dance recital, you know. And these kids are looking at me like, who is this loser? You know, like, who did my mother marry? You know, and it was devastating on everybody, her mother, everybody. It was a bad time. And then I start overdosing, and I'm overdosing in the house with my family home. There's paramedics in my house. My daughter's in the house. You know, it's one of the more horrible times in my life because it affected everybody so much, and it caused such pain. You know, my daughter now was older, and my daughter had to start living through my disease where, you know, I was able to hide it when she was little. There was no hiding it no more, you know, and she was being raised by her stepmother. I stopped being the father, Mike, you know. I certainly wasn't a husband, and I definitely wasn't a stepfather, you know, and honestly, I wasn't a son or a brother either, you know, and I wasn't a worker. I was in a relationship with my disease. And, it was multiple overdoses, you know, kicked out of the house, paramedics in the house multiple times, you know, calling my brother, Mike, we didn't get him back yet. My brother knew, you know, a lot of officers in my town, you know, kids not able to come to the house no more. No one allowed in the car. The kids not wanting to be with me. I became my dad, you know. When he was when I was little, he came in the room, everyone left. It was the same thing. You know, the person I didn't want to be, I became. And not saying that about my dad now. My dad's amazing, and I love him. We have a great relationship. But, you know, I became that guy. When you walked in the room, everyone left. When you walked in the house, no one knew what to expect. All eyes on me all the time. What's he going to do now? What's he going to be like? Nobody was comfortable. You know, I made everyone on eggshells, and you know, they all became victim of my disease. And that's what happens. You know, we don't realize how many people we swarm in that net. You know, everybody was suffering. You know, my parents, my brother, to kick him out. You know, he needs to go to treatment. Everybody's life was revolving around me. And then I got kicked out, you know, and I finally got kicked out again. And I had to pick my daughter up to take her to the movies. And she was in the house with her stepmother. I was in the Red Roof Inn, and her mother was in the condo. It got to the point where my daughter wasn't even living with her own family. You know, that's where the guy that took her daughter everywhere, and I had a million pictures, and I was the greatest dad in the world. I couldn't even be there for my own daughter, you know. I gave her away in a way, you know. And I picked her up to go to the movies, and I couldn't even get to the movies. I said, let me change my shirt. And she knew, Daddy, why you got to change your shirt? And I said, oh, I just don't like it. And I left my daughter in the car while I went in the room in the hotel and got high, and that's the guy I became, and that day, my daughter sent me a text. I said, Dad, I don't want to be with you no more. I know you say you were going to stop, but I just don't believe you. And if it's just going to be like this, I'd rather stay with Mom. I'm too young to even know what this is. I've been living this my whole life, and it was something that for the first time in my life had me reflect on the fact that I had now caused harm to something that was so great, it made me feel it inside. And I said, for the first time in my life, I have to change from the inside. I can't do this to this kid. If I don't change what's on the inside and I do another quick fix, I'm going to destroy her. She'll never feel comfortable. She won't have no confidence. She needs her father. Mm-hmm. If I get sober, I could break the cycle. Mm-hmm. And all I thought about was AA and that it worked for someone else. And that's what it took for me to finally say, I'm going to give my life over to this program. And all I had was a little faith that it worked for someone else. So the sad thing is, the greatest thing that ever happened to me was my daughter telling me she didn't want to be with me no more, because that's what really was the impetus for change. Mm-hmm. And I turned my life over to AA at that time, and it was the hardest first year of my life. My disease did not want to let me go. I turned right back to eating. And for the first 6 months of my recovery, I wasn't living home. I was in a tremendous amount of pain. I wasn't happy. And I began eating addictively again. And by November 1, so that was April 1st, 2018. That's my sober date. On November 1 of 2018, I weighed 314 pounds.
Wow.
Yeah, almost. I'm 220 now. I was 100 pounds more. I gained about 75 pounds in 6 months. And I almost died in my sleep twice with sleep apnea. My sleep apnea was beyond. And I had to have stomach surgery. And all these things happened, in that first month, 6 months up into that surgery, where it was so humiliating. It was so embarrassing. It was so painful to know what I did. And I wanted it all to go away. I wanted to be the new me. I wanted that instant change, but I knew I couldn't. But it was the first time in my life I ever wanted to be sober more than I wanted to be sick. And it didn't matter what was going on in my life. I was going for it. I had that light at the end of the tunnel, and nothing was going to stop me from getting to it. I just kept going to meetings and going to meetings and going to meetings, and 2 and 3. And me and my wife would fight. There was so much damage done. I would just go to meetings no matter what. And, on November 1, 2018, I had stomach surgery, and the weight began to fall off, and I just kept going to meetings. I kept going to meetings. And all these things started changing for me. My relationship with my daughter got better. My relationship with my wife suffered. There was a lot of damage done there. Things got better with my stepkids. Things got better at work. Some things got better, some things didn't. But I started to get more healthy. I started to see, a positive direction happening in my life without drugs and alcohol. I started to really believe in the program. I started to understand that God was ever present in my life. Even though I didn't want him, he still was there. That he carried me to April 2018. He kept me alive all those times. And I started to understand that this horrible disease and all this pain I went through was now for a reason. And I was going to use this to reshape my life. The disease and the pain was going to be the gift that I could give someone else, and then COVID came, as you know, and shut everything down. And it was that moment where I stepped up and said, you know what, I'm not stopping. And I started a group, and I put meetings on Facebook, and people showed up, and this meeting in the parking lot grew from 4 people to 12 people.
I was there.
You were there. That's where I met you, And I started a group, No Meds of Sobriety, and that all happened during COVID. And I was unwilling to stop, and it really showed me when it's one thing to go to a clubhouse when there's a meeting at 9. It's another thing to go find a meeting in a park, or find a meeting in a parking lot, or to call everyone and say, yo, it wasn't like, let's go, I'll meet you at the bar on Friday. It was like, let's meet at the park and have an AA meeting. It was a really spiritual, powerful experience for me, and for other people. And I started to see how this program helps people and how it works. And, through that and through, starting the group and then finding a church to go to. And that was hard to do. That was really hard to do because nobody was renting spaces, and all these things started happening, and that's when I met you and a lot of people. And it just became a beautiful thing. And then what happens is I learned how recovery and Alcoholics Anonymous has to be the most important thing in my life. See, when I first got sober, I'm not going to say it wasn't for my daughter. Of course it was. But then I started to see what it did in my life and how ultimately I had to be sober for me. Because if I was sober for me, I wouldn't have to resort back to drugs and alcohol because I would no longer need them. I'd be able to deal with life the way life is. I would be able to deal with how I felt without drugs and alcohol by talking about it, by understanding I might be thinking less of myself, but I'm not less of myself. I don't have to feel that way. Starting to understand that my thoughts are the problem, not the alcohol, and start not listening to myself and, get a sponsor and start working with a sponsor, and then my sobriety developed, to where the greatest gift of all is carrying the message, is going into those treatment centers and sponsoring people and being able to share my experience and all my pain and understanding that that's the gift I get to give people, that I've also felt like you, but I'm not suffering no more, and I go from being a walking corpse, right? Because, we're born with alcoholism, Mike, and we're going to die with alcoholism. But now, because of sobriety in this program, I'm not going to die of alcoholism. I'm going to die a sober man as long as I keep doing the things I'm doing. So that book that was being written for me, that was going to have that ending where, I didn't make it, is now a completely different book. It's being rewritten through sobriety, through the program Alcoholics Anonymous. Things like this are now in my book. These beautiful things being, my daughter's right in that room over there.
Oh, praises. I love it. I love it.
My daughter's right in that room just there. Me and my wife, things are working out.
I love it. All praises, man.
I don't eat like I used to. I don't, do a lot of things like I used to, but I understand I'm flawed, and as long as I don't pick up a drink or a drug, I'm going to be able to work through those things. And I understand the importance of a meeting on a good day, on a bad day. I understand that, I had to learn how to live with money in my pocket. I had to learn how to live with, it's Saturday night and I might be bored. Like, it's okay to be bored a little bit. I had to learn how to open mail and do all these things that I didn't do, and not, I go to the gym regularly. I understand that there's our triangle, right? There's my triangle, mind, body, spirit. And I got to work all sides of my triangle to feel right. I got to go to the gym. I got to eat good. Otherwise I don't feel good. When I don't feel good, I don't want to feel good. I want that pain to go away, so, and whatever I'm going through, I bring it into the program. I talk to my sponsor, and now I got this way to live that I never wanted. I never wanted to do this, Mike. I never wanted to get sober. I just wanted to be sober. I just wanted the pain and the chaos to stop. Now I found a way to do it, and how grateful I am, to be able to live this life and be happy and joyous and free. And, what's more is my daughter gets to be happy, joyous, and free. My mother gets to be happy, joyous, and free. My brother gets to be happy, joyous, and free. They don't worry about what condition I'm going to be in on the holidays or if they could come there with their kids or, things like that. I'm not the talk of the family no more. I'm the one they come to. They want to be around me now. It's just a different life.
I love it, brother.
It really is, man. It's amazing. And, thank you to God and the program for doing that for me, because nothing I did on my own. Now I put a lot of effort into it, but, a lot of this was a gift. A lot of people put blood, sweat, and tears into me being this way, sponsorship and things like that, So I'm very grateful for that, man. I'm very grateful to have this amazing life I have,
Thanks for sharing, brother. I got a couple of questions to tie things up. How long did it take you for you to really be comfortable sober, you think?
It took me to COVID. It took me to where when I started the meetings, I had to step up and be kind of like that in charge person. And it gave me the confidence because I was living right, as best I could, and I knew I had to be at that level where I had to take charge. And I had this confidence. It was always in me. It just needed to be directed in the right way. When you have a passion for what you do, it's easy.
Yeah.
It didn't come fake anymore. And I knew I had God at my side. I didn't have to worry no more because I knew if God wanted me dead, if he wanted me home, he would have took me. He wanted me
Mm-hmm.
alive to do this. I carry that every day. I'm here doing his God's work. So I just lost the fear. You know, the fear went away when COVID happened, and I stopped worrying and just started doing, you know.
How do you handle people, places, and things?
I went out for my 4-year anniversary. I celebrated and took my family to dinner. Beautiful. All people clapping for me. Oh, he started Nomads, blah, 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 blah. I go to this beautiful restaurant. I want to go get away from it to go in the restroom. When I go in the restroom and I look at the stall, I go, wow, man, look at that stall. Door to the floor, a lock, sheetrock. I could party in that restroom all night. I went out a month ago to a restaurant. I ordered my wife a drink. I'm pretty comfortable in places. The bartender couldn't make the drink I wanted. He gave her a drink. He made the drink we asked for and put it right in front of me. It was like it manifested in my mouth. I taste it. I feel it in me. And I had to run outside and call my sponsor and tell him what I was going through. So what I learned is I never have this. I always got to be vigilant. I always got to be aware that something might happen, and I got to use the tools that the program gives me. I live in the program and understand that just because I sponsor guys and I got 6 years sober, it could be gone like that. So I don't take no chances. I don't try to be strong. I don't try to be tough. I learned to be strong by being weak and saying I need help and reaching out to people, you know, and that's the only way it works. I never feel like I got this, man. I feel like a newcomer every day. I feel like if you take a professional boxer like Floyd Mayweather, he doesn't stop working on the basics because he's Floyd Mayweather. He still works on the basics. So I still remember the basics. You know, you got to watch your people, your places, your things. You got to stay close to the program. Make sure you keep your phone on you. Always have it out. Be vigilant. You know, I just keep those things in the forefront. You know, never be too comfortable. Never be too confident.
What advice do you have for the newcomer? Somebody that's out there, or somebody that's out there struggling right now, and you could talk to them face to face right now.
The biggest problem I had was that I failed to do the one thing I needed to do more than anything, which was, you know, work from the inside out. You know, I would try to fix everything on the outside, and when things got good, I would get away from the program thinking everything was okay, but I never fixed the inside. So inevitably, whatever I fixed, I would destroy again. So if you focus on yourself, and if you put that as your priority, and you focus on healing and growing and understanding yourself and really involve yourself in this program, you don't have to worry about fixing those things. You won't destroy them again. You know, you got to really buckle down on this program and take those suggestions, you know, that sponsorship. Mike, there's nothing to me more important than the fellowship. You know, I sponsor a lot of guys and I keep them in my group chat. I make sure we do events. I make sure that we're doing sober activities so they understand like we're a gang of sober people and we're here. We're not meant to do this alone. This program was designed not to do it alone. You know, we're meant to be with each other. And I find comfort in being with other alcoholics. So they really need to find comfort in the meeting and working on the inside. And the other outside stuff will take care of itself.
Sum it up, John. All I'm gonna say is, bro, I related to so much that you talked about in your story, bro. About growing up having the insecurity, going through some bullying. Then I became the bully person in terms of not physically beating people up, but cracking jokes, insulting people, just, you know what I'm saying? Thinking that I was becoming a class clown, but I was really hurting people in the process. You know what I mean? I had to make some amends with some people from that was in elementary and middle school with me, man. You know what I mean? And not understanding the pain that I put them through until I did the steps. You get what I'm saying? And
it's amazing to have a big ego and be insecure at the same time, right?
yeah. And the relationships, conquering it, getting into that relationship, saying you want this, want that, and then get it. And now I'm bored. Now I want to move on to the next. You know what I mean? I didn't understand it at the time with myself, but I had resentments towards my mom, and I was really chasing her love through all of those different relationships. I didn't understand that until I did step 4. You know what I mean? Like, where's all of this coming from? Why am I acting like this? Why am I treating people like this? You know what I mean? But I related to so much of your story, of the things you was talking about, like wonder why she like me or this or that, or like all of that kind of stuff. That was real, brother. And again, bro, I want to thank you for coming on. It's always a joy when I see you, when I walk in the room, and it just be that love you give and the excitement that you have, the passion you have for recovery, man.
Same,
I love
bro.
it, bro.
I got a lot of love and respect for what you do, man. I see what you do. I respect you.
All right, brother. No doubt, man. Thanks for coming on, John. I'll see you soon, brother.
One day at a time, brother.
All right, no doubt, man. That was John, man. Very passionate brother in recovery, man. And stay tuned next week as we bring somebody else on to Soberheadz podcast one day at a time. Also, we'll have In the Spotlight podcast next week also. So you guys enjoy the rest of your night. This is Mike. Shalom.